So this is a layout of the typical architecture of a web application. So up until now you may have just used HTML and CSS for your web pages. So when your client browser makes a request out to the internet, and then it goes out and it finds the web server where your page is hosted, the web server takes that information, sends it back through the internet, and returns the information back to the client. So a common structure is set up that you have your web server, and now in this course you're also going to be adding in a database server, which is where your MySQL database is going to be. And then email is typically hosted on a separate email server. So static web pages, which is typical of what you might have done in a regular web development course with HTML and CSS, right? As we said, the web browser makes an HTTP request to the server. The server has or hosts the HTML and CSS file, and then when it finds the file that's been requested, it sends back an HTTP response to the browser. So what this looks like is something like this, right? Your browser, the client makes a request to the web host, right? So it's saying we want to get this information. We're using an HTTP request to get this page. So when it makes it to the server that's hosting that site, right, it finds the page, and then it sends an HTTP response back to the client browser. So it's basically sending this response. It's saying the content type that's coming back is going to be text HTML. It will describe the length, and it even has information about the web server. And then it will send your HTML information with the rest of the response. So the browser gets this information first, and then it gets the rest of the content. So web pages processed with PHP work a little bit differently, right? Your web browser makes a request to the server, so just like it does with an HTML document. Now, if the document contains PHP on the web server, then PHP needs to be processed by the server before it sends the response back to the browser. Now, when we start to connect our information to our MySQL database, right, your web server PHP script, if that needs to go out to the database, right, it's going to connect out to the database server, because our script will have the information in there about that connection information. So if the script requires anything from the database, then it will send the request to the database server, and then our script will get the result back from the database. We'll be using our PHP code to compile a response back to the client. So that's just an overview of how dynamic web pages are processed with PHP in comparison to standard static HTML requests.